our guest speaker today is Scott Barclay, partner and CFO of Barclay Mechanical Services of Utah. Scott Barclay is an equal partner and acting CFO of Barclay Mechanical Services with over a decade of experience in the industrial construction industry. In his 13 years as partner at Barclay Mechanical, he's closed over $175 million in projects. Yeah, did I just hear a woo? Little shout out there. Which has made Barclay Mechanical a leading competitor in the industrial construction sector. As CFO, which stands for Chief Financial Officer, if you don't know, of Barclay Mechanical, Scott is responsible for the profitability of the company. He has helped expand his clientele across the United States and internationally with huge companies such as Rio Tinto, Chevron, HF Sinclair, Owens Corning, Southwest Energy, IPP, and many others. When he's not checking on projects, bidding the next project, closing deals, and managing over 100 employees, he enjoys time at his ranch in Moroni, Utah, where he and his beautiful wife, Ruth, who is also joining us here today, have 3 kids, 12 horses, a zebra, 6 goats, 10 chickens, 3 snakes, a dog, a cat, a hawk, and open space to enjoy it all. Scott and his wife Ruth run an investment company called Oracle and Hercules, LLC. They're angel investors in startups and land development projects, helping new entrepreneurs to get their start and coaching advice along the way. He's known around the world for mastering high business success while still creating the blissful heaven on earth life that he desires. So please welcome Scott Barclay.
Thank you. That was a good introduction of the bio that I wrote for myself. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. As he stated, I have an industrial construction company. So in construction, there's 3 main sections of construction, right? You do residential, which is building homes and everything like that. Then you have commercial, and that's more buildings like this building was built by a commercial contractor late in construction. All these like buildings that go around for stores and everything, that's all commercial. Even skyscrapers is considered commercial. And then industrial, which is what I do, which is power plants, oil refineries, production facilities. Like I built the facility that made all of the fiberglass insulation that's in these walls. So I built the plant that makes that. If you get French fries from, well, actually they're waffle fries from Chick-fil-A, I've built 3 plants now that make those waffle fries, right? So stuff like that. Industrial construction, food processing is part of that. Actually, in this building though, because Leighton Construction didn't have the right people to do it, I built the spiral staircase that you guys go up, right? We built all that. So growing up, I grew up just a little manti right here. And I played a lot of sports. And in that, I was able to learn a lot of like work ethic stuff, right? How to do hard things. My coaches would always push me, especially in football. They would teach us that when it gets tough, you always have a little bit more that you can do. And then when I graduated high school, I wanted to serve a LDS mission. And so I needed to make enough money to do that. And so I started working at the Skyline coal mine, which is just up over the mountain. So I worked in the coal mine. I worked 13 miles underground where they'd run into some water. And we were installing these pumps and then connecting a bunch of piping so we could pump all that water out of the mine so they could keep mining for coal. And I made a lot of money, you know, but it was pretty scary. There's times where the walls caved in and all of a sudden you're covered in dust, and that happened upstream, and now you don't know if you're going to make it out of the mine. And I always made it out, but it's a pretty scary situation. But I learned a lot of good quality skills, but especially I learned a lot of hard work. Then after that, I served a mission in Mexico, where it was awesome because I learned fluent Spanish, which I use daily. And then I learned a lot of how to receive no's, how to be told no a lot. Then I came back and I went to Snow College, graduated here. And then after Snow College, I went to Utah State, where I got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in business administration with a focus on finance, and then another in Spanish. It didn't take much after serving that mission to upgrade from a minor to a major in Spanish, so I just did both of them. And then after that, well, actually, while I was going to college, I didn't want to do student loans and stuff, which is not a bad thing. I just was personally trying not to. So I went and did summer sales. And after serving a mission and learning to knock doors and hear no all the time, it was actually a pretty easy job for me. And I made good money so that I was able to make it through college without having to do any student loans. But one thing that I definitely learned there that helped me a lot in business is I learned how to just keep calm in the sale. Like anytime you're trying to close a sale, the more calm and confident you can be, the easier it is. And I just made it easy. I would just knock doors and be like, hey, we're out here servicing all these homes tomorrow, so I'm trying to get everybody on the same route. That way we're not pushing bugs around because I sell pest control. If we can get you guys all together, we'll just go ahead and do it cheaper for everybody. And that way it's a lot more effective and we don't have to come back out and reservice people. And they'd all say, I already have a company. And instead of being like, yeah, but ours will do this, or saying okay and leaving, I was like, yeah, everybody has a company. We're just getting you all together, so it's a lot more effective. And then you always wait for them to say something. And then they'll be like, yeah, but I already have a contract. I'm like, yep, everybody has a contract, and we're just helping you get out of that onto ours so we can just do it all together. You know, keep it the same. Keep it confident and keep it simple and keep it calm. And if you can keep it calm, you can usually close the sale. There's a lot more that would went into that, but you would finally get them to agree that there's a time they'll be home, and you'd pretty much do their first service for a really low price to help them get out of their contract and their buyout and move them over to you. But then once you did have everybody together, you did make the company a lot of money, because if you do spray everybody together, you're not coming back out and doing reservices every time they see a bug, because you really did clear it out. So it was very effective. Anyways, so I learned how to stay calm, confident, and to just keep everybody tranquil, right, while you go through the sale. Then after that, after I graduated Utah State, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the hiring process. And so I signed on for a job, and I took a job with a staffing company. At the time, it was called SOS Staffing. I think they're called like Elwood Staffing now. They got bought out. Anyways, and I worked for them. I ran a branch for them up in Logan, Utah, just out because I graduated Utah State up there. And when I first started running that company, they were losing about $30,000 a year. And so I looked at what they needed to do, and really all they needed to do was increase their sales. They had everything set up. They just didn't have enough people out working. And so because of these door-to-door sales, that's the only thing I knew how to do. I started going to these big plants, production facilities, and started just knocking on their door, trying to get to talk to somebody and try to find out who's in HR and does all the hiring. And I tried going through HR, and they had all these contracts, and I was striking out on a lot of this stuff. And because I spoke Spanish, I saw all these guys going into work at this place called Icon Health and Fitness, where they make treadmills and stuff. And I asked him, I was like, where'd you guys get hired through? And he's like, I'm actually the floor manager, and I do most of the hiring. I just have to send HR who to hire. I'm all, really? When can you talk? He's like, I got to go into work right now. I'm like, well, what time do you get off work? I'll take you to dinner. And he told me, and so I took him to dinner. Anyways, I take this guy to dinner, and he hardly speaks any English, so we just spoke Spanish the whole time. But pretty much I got him to commit to giving me like the next 3, see how they do. So then I made sure I sent him the 3 best people I could find. And he loved how fast I got him there. And he just started sending me orders. Well, next thing I knew, he just sent me more orders and more orders and more orders. And I'm trying to hire more people. And in 2 months' time, I had sent 100 employees to work at Icon Health and Fitness. So much so that their HR representative had to come talk to me and say, what are you doing? We have a contract with a competing staffing company we're supposed to hire through, and now you have more people here than them. And I was like, I'm just fulfilling your orders. And they're like, no, we've noticed you've been fulfilling them fast, so we'd like to give you the contract. So instead of getting mad for kind of going a different way, they gave me the contract. Long story short, at the end of that year, our profits were about $500,000. Profit, right? Net profit. And I went to the company and I met with the CEO. She was trying to ask everything that I did. And I told her my whole story. And I was asking for a little bit of a raise, right? Because they weren't paying me very much money. And they're like, yeah, we're going to give you the max raise possible. We're going to give you $500 a year, right? And with the hours I was working, that ended up being about 50 cents an hour, maybe, right? After taking their profits from negative 30,000 to 500,000. And that's when I decided I'm not going to work for anybody else ever again. There is no reason in my mind to give all your hard work to somebody else. And I can't live a life where I don't have unlimited earning possibilities. And so I got with my brothers, and we'd always worked in construction. And me and two of my brothers purchased an industrial construction company, Barclay Mechanical. And we couldn't afford it, and we couldn't get a big enough loan. So we worked out a loan with the owner. And so he financed the company to us. We gave him what we could. He pulled all the money out of it, which was really hard to run a company without any money to start off. And then so we didn't have to buy the money. We just had to buy the company. And then we worked out a finance plan. And because he didn't want to get hit so hard with taxes, it worked out good with him. If we would have bought the company right off the bat, he would have had to pay taxes on that. But instead, we pay him monthly for 20 years. He's the bank. And see, a lot of companies will sell to you like that. Because a lot of people trying to sell their company, they don't want $10 million up front. They want monthly payments, because otherwise they get with this huge tax burden right off the bat. Whereas if they're getting in payments and they can roll it into other things like real estate or something, there's a lot of ways to avoid the tax penalty. And so a lot of people will sell you companies like that. So if you're looking to jump into a company, talk to those selling it about self-financing it to you. Anyways, we bought the company, and then I was trying to learn how to bid all these jobs, because that was the main thing I wanted to get into, is how do I get more work? And the previous owner would be like, well, I did a job like this back in '76, and it took me about this much time. And then I'm like, but how am I supposed to bid it? And so they didn't know how to teach me. And so I took about 6 months, and I went through all these drawings for all the projects that we'd done. And I started counting everything in them. Diameters of weld, feet of weld, pounds of steel, pounds of concrete, yards of concrete, square footage. I started counting everything in those drawings and comparing them to other projects. And I went in their QuickBooks and I pulled up all the job cost accounting, and I started seeing what it cost to do all these jobs. And I made formulas. It took me 6 months of working 60, 70-hour weeks, but I did it. And I took those formulas, which I keep. I have never given those to anybody. And now all I do is I get drawings, I count everything, I put them into my formulas, and it tells me exactly what to bid. And I don't ever lose money on those jobs. Now, sometimes I do them at almost break even because I don't have enough work for my guys. And so, but I can choose the profit percentage. If I'm really busy, I bump up the profit percentage, because then if I get it, it's worth all the stress to get it done. And then after we got that company growing, I learned a lot of lessons, and that's kind of what I wanted to go into now after the history was, well, I'll go one more thing that I had to do is, another way I had to get customers, and I only knew the one way of like knocking doors and stuff, right? There's way better ways to get customers, by the way. I've learned over the years that networking events are awesome, by the way. You can get so many more customers way easier through knowing people. But at the time I was just knocking, so I went to Chevron Oil Refinery in North Salt Lake. And I went right up to the guard shack because they don't let anybody in. I said, I need to talk to somebody about getting work in here. And they're like, well, you can talk to HR for apply for a job. I said, no, I like to build all this stuff. Oh, they're like, I don't even know who you talk to. I'm like, give me somebody. They finally gave me a name. I called that person for like a month every day. Finally, they answered, and they says, no, you need to talk to this person. I called that person for a few weeks. Finally, they answered, and they gave me another person. And this went through like 4 or 5 levels. And then finally, I got to somebody who said, well, you can bid these projects, but you have to have 30 million aggregate insurance, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I'm like, I have it, even though I did not have it yet. And so I went to my insurance company, what's it going to cost to do this? They told me. Hurried and got it set up because they had a project coming forward, and they let me bid my first project. Well, on that first project, I just bid it for pretty much break even. And I think I actually lost a little money on that job. But I had to do it to get in because I knew they were going to give it to only the low bid, and they'd never heard of me before, so I had to come in low. And I went in low. I got the job, sent my best team, worked with them on the job, most of it, and we just busted it out and did a great job. They loved us. I pretended we made money on it so that they would think they're going to get that from me every time. And then they just started letting us bid everything, right? And we started moving up in them. Well, once I had the oil refinery now behind our belt, I went to all the other ones. They started letting us bid projects. And we just moved forward with that, right? And that's how we grew in the oil refinery sector. And where we are now, like this is a good one. Yesterday, I know Governor Cox. Some of you might, because he's from Fairview, just right up here. And it doesn't matter if you agree with his politics or not. That's irrelevant to the story. I have been texting him since we found out there's going to be a nuclear facility built over here in Price, asking him how I can get in on that project. And he wouldn't answer me, And I says, quit forgetting about us little people in Sanpete, tell me who I can talk to on this. And finally I got a name yesterday of who's running that project. And I emailed him last night because I got his name, email, and phone number. I started with an email to see what happened. And this morning he messaged me back and says, can you meet tomorrow at 9 a.m.? So tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm gonna go meet about building that nuclear facility over in Price. So there's a lot of lessons with that I'll get into as I go on. I probably should see what time it is. At what time do I stop?
1:20. You got like 25 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. So first, let me give you guys some advice, then I'll talk about lessons learned, and then I'll just open it up to some questions. But my top advice, my number one thing to tell you guys is be number one. And I'm going to explain it a little better, right? It doesn't mean you have to be the number one company. It doesn't mean you have to be number one. So when I was a kid, I played on this little, it was this advanced, I don't even know what you call it nowadays, but it was an all-star basketball team, and we would travel around the state and play in some games. I was only in 7th grade, right? And everybody else was in 8th grade. And so I was the youngest one on the team. And we're traveling, we went to this one game, and we get there, and I always, as a kid, I was very superstitious, so I didn't want to wash my basketball shorts, and because we were going to lose. And they were pretty bad. And I'd left them in my bag too. And my mom had smelled them from outside of the bag, so she took them and had washed them. Well, I was heading to my basketball game, I went and grabbed my bag, I knew my shorts were in there, and I took off. And I hop in the van with everybody, and we get to the game, and I look, and I don't have my basketball shorts. And I'd gone in Levi's, right? And so then I went to my coach, I'm like, I don't feel good. He's like, I know you feel good. I heard you joking with people the whole ride up, what's going on. And I told him, I said, I forgot my basketball shorts. All I have is my Levi's. And it was the best advice, one of the best advice anybody's ever gave me. His name was Reed Cox. And he grabs me, and he had this cool Sanpete accent, And he goes, Barclay, number one doesn't care what pants he wears to play basketball. It sounds so simple, right? But man, did that stick with me, because I wanted to be the best, and it didn't matter what pants I wore. And I did. I played the whole game in pants, in Levi's. And I led the team in scoring in Levi's. It taught me a really good lesson. But being number one means you're being the best version of yourself that you can be without letting the world change who you are. And if you can do that, you're going to be successful all the time. Be the best version of you that you can be. The next thing that I wanted to say, the next advice I have is to be honest. One time I was bidding a project, and it was only me and one other contractor. There's really only about 5 or 6 of us in the state that do what we do. And only 2 of us showed up at this bid job. And after we got done looking at the job, the competitor calls me and says, my competitor calls me, and he says, hey, Scott, we're the only ones bidding on it. Do you want to jack up the price? And then whichever one of us does it, split the profit. That's pretty tempting, right? It's pretty free money, right? And I didn't really even hesitate. I just says, no way. There's no way I would do that, because for one, I put my last name is on my company, right? And I would never want my last name be associated with that. And number 2, if that ever came out, I'd never get a job anywhere else ever again. And he's like, well, I'm thinking about bidding this project, I'm thinking about buying this property up in Park City for like $5.4 million, like now he's telling me what he's bidding at. And I says, if you're going to do it for that, you can have it. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. And I hung up the phone, because I was already planning on bidding around like 7, right? And you're going to do it for 5.4? Well, now I got nervous that I overbid it. So I dropped my price to like 6.5. Well, he got nervous that I told him, if you're going to have it for that, you can do it. And he upped his price. And I ended up getting that job, and I was $2,000 less than him. That's it. And I was honest with the thing. What comes out, he had actually bid it right, I'd bid it wrong. I did the job for what he was going to bid it at, right? But because I was honest, that's how I feel. I was able to get that work. And I can look my customer in the eyes and say they can trust me, you know? And the next thing I want to say for top advice is be confident. Confidence is king. One of the biggest customers I have now, the first job I bid for them, it's the very first job I bid for them. They gave me this whole package of drawings and they wanted it bid in like 2 days. I said, there's no way anybody is going to get you this price in 2 days. Like, well, we have to. We just sold this plant and went to this company and these upgrades have to be done. In order to get it done in time, we have to have bids by this day so we can finish by this time. I said, I can finish by that time. But I said, but I can't get you a bid. And I went and talked to him and I said, I just had the confidence. I just went home. I put together a rate sheet. I went right back to him and I says, here's my rate sheet. I will have you guys here tomorrow. If you can agree to that rate sheet, I just can't bid it, but I promise it'll be done on time. And just because I had enough confidence to just switch the paradigm of it has to be bid, it has to go this way, they said, okay, send them over. And we ended up doing a big multi-million-dollar job, making good money on it at that rate sheet. And they loved us so much, we're still doing business with them. Every year I do a big job, at least one big project for them, sometimes 3 or 4. So confidence is definitely king. The other thing I want to say for really important advice is stay ahead of the money. So if you have a business and you do not know where your business stands financially, if you don't know if you're making money, if you get to the end of the week and you don't know if you made money that week, or if you don't know if you have enough money to buy a piece of equipment, or if you don't know until the end when you do your taxes how much money you made, then you have a hobby. You don't have a business. All right. I track weekly the cash value of the company, and I make all the decisions based on which way that's moving weekly. Every Friday, I have my office staff put together what I call my Friday folly, and it takes into account your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, jobs in progress, everything that's going on in your company, and gives you a cash value of the company. If that cash value is going down, I make changes immediately. If it's going up, I see how to keep making it go up, or I project which way it's going to go. You should always, always, always be in front of the money. Because if you're making decisions and you don't know what the money is, you're eventually going to fail. The next thing is you got to be trustworthy and finish. So do what you say. So I told you guys I had all these formulas for bidding jobs, but sometimes I do jobs that aren't part of my formulas that I've never done before. And I was bidding this piping job for one of the oil refineries that had this high chrome piping that I had never done that type of material before, and it's super complicated. And so I bid it as if it was like stainless piping, and it is way harder than that. There's so many levels. You have to test the materials, then you have to make sure you test the rod you use to fill it. Then you have to heat up both pieces of material to an exact temperature, hold it in that temperature range while you weld it. Then when you're done welding it, you have to x-ray it to make sure that's good. Then you have to put ceramics on it, slowly heat it up to a certain temperature, slowly bring it back down so that all the metals fuse together. Then you have to hardness test it, then re-x-ray it for every single weld, right? And I bid it for pretty much weld every single weld. And we got doing that job and I realized everything we had to do, and I was going to lose a lot of money. But I told them I would do it for that price, and they awarded it to me for that price. And in the end, I lost $350,000. But I paid for my education, and I finished the job. And they knew I lost a lot of money. But because I lost that money, and I stuck to it, and I didn't stick them with it, and I didn't leave the job, and so I was trustworthy, and I finished, they just kept giving me work after that, and they still do. It's one of our biggest customers. That's for HF Sinclair Refinery in North Salt Lake. Anyways, that's my main advice. And then some of the lessons that I've learned that one big thing that it's kind of hard to understand until you've been there, but you guys will probably understand it, is that it doesn't have to be hard. I always thought growing up, because my dad was always like probably a lot of years, hard work, you know. I always thought it had to be hard in order to get the benefit from it. And a lot of times it is. A lot of times it's darn hard. And you just have to like realize that sometimes it's not. Like sometimes it could just happen. Like, for example, I'm doing these projects for years, for a little while now, that there was this contractor, this company that's kind of like mine, but a way smaller. They weren't big enough to get into some of these plants. They couldn't afford the size of insurance you need. They didn't have the safety record over years that you have to have and everything. But the plant really wanted this one leader to run these projects. And so what I did is I worked out a deal with that company to purchase them for free, but I would run them under my company and they would still do those projects. I literally do nothing. They just bill me what they would have billed the plant. I mark it up 15% and bill the plant, and I make money off of them every month. Because all I had to do was set that little connection up. So like I said, it doesn't have to be hard. It is hard a lot of times, but it doesn't have to be. Look for the easy wins too and take them. And then the other thing is don't grow too fast. There was a time early in the company that I grew too fast. I was so excited that I was getting all this work coming in. I was bidding it all. I didn't turn down anything. And I got this job out in Kansas City that kind of went south on us. I had to get out there and fix it because we got in a fight with the unions who were picketing the line. They didn't like that we were non-union, and they were, even though I pay more than they pay, it's messed up. They're like the mafia. But anyways, I had to get out there and deal with all that stuff. I ended up having to live in Kansas City for 6 months, and it's because I didn't have enough. I hadn't grown the company to enough leadership to take on that project. I shouldn't have taken it. I had to go run it myself. And because I ran it myself, I wasn't able to grow the company at all. I was able to do one project for 6 months, and it really hurt. It really hurt our progress. It took us a while to come back from that. So don't grow too fast. If you can't handle it, just wait and start see that that's what you needed to get there and start putting those pieces in place first. And then another important one for me has been knowing my hourly value. So I figure that I just go off of like how much money I bring in the company. So I do about $30 million in sales a year. That's about how much money I bring into the company. Well, of that, we make about 18%, which is about $5.4 million net profit. Well, you take that net profit and you take how many hours I work a year, which is about 3,200, and my time is about $1,800 an hour. It's worth about $1,800 an hour. So if I'm not getting paid $1,800 an hour, I shouldn't be doing that job. I have people that I've hired, and they should be doing that job. And so know your hourly value, and don't do it. Hire somebody to do it if it's worth less than what you can make doing something else or growing the company. Other thing is, don't be afraid or shy to stand up for you and yourself and yours. Right? I always say it like, don't be afraid to fight for your family. That's how I usually say it, but you guys are a little younger, so don't be afraid to stand up for you and yours. And that comes down to your customers. Sometimes it's really hard because your big customers are like, we're just not going to pay you for that. Or they're like, yeah, we'll pay you guys soon. Just finish the job and then we'll pay you. Well, eventually that's going to bite you. And I've seen so many companies go out of business off of trust, verbal trust, right? So you got to get in there and fight early. As soon as you see you're being taken advantage of, stop it. And people will respect it. They know what they're doing. They're not going to quit using you as a customer. And if they do, it's because they're going to go do that to somebody else and they're going to stick it to them. So don't be afraid to stand up and fight for yours. And then build real relationships. Like, I like to take my customers fishing, if that's what they like, or we take them to jazz games. We've had season tickets and stuff. Nobody wants to go to those anymore right now. And we do a lot of fun stuff, but we build real relationships. It's not just surface. We find out, like I send my customers' wives, like I say, tell your wife happy birthday. Keep those notes. And once you build real relationships with people, you'll get work. They'll give you their business, even if you're not the cheapest, even if you're not the fastest, because people really, really admire relationships, and they enjoy having them. I was trying to think of the right word. But anyways, okay, there's a weird one to say, but you guys are young enough, you're right at the age you need to hear it. marry the right person. If you're dating somebody and they can't support your work already because you don't give them enough attention, I don't even know if love's enough, right? You're not going to be successful if you marry that person. I've seen so many amazing entrepreneurs lose everything because their spouse, it was too hard for their spouse. And if you're that person to your significant other, well, then maybe you're not an entrepreneur either. Like, you have to understand that what it takes. And you have to have people in your life that love you and support you. And I'm lucky right now that I have the most amazing wife who I'll tell her, I'm not coming home for 2 weeks. I have to be on a job site. And instead of being, but we need you guys, we need you at home, she just goes, thank you for doing that for the family, right? And that's what you need. You need somebody that's going to be like that, because it will make or break you. I've seen it break a lot of really brilliant minds. Anyways, you guys know what you're doing. And then the other thing is, if it feels off, it is. All right? So sometimes when I'm bidding projects, I have all these numbers on my spreadsheets and everything, and something feels off. I'm like, what is going on? But it feels off. And that's because something is, right? The numbers are scrambled. Sometimes, and I finally found out I forgot to put one parenthesis in my formula, and it made like $100,000 different on my bid. And how do you notice that on a $20 million bid? Well, it's only $100,000. That's a lot of money, right? $100,000 is a lot of money. And it's all because I forgot one parenthesis. So, and that's just a formula thing, but that means in your company, if somebody's like a lot of times I have employees that all of a sudden they're quiet, right? And there's some of my leaders and something feels off. I can let them be like everybody has a day, but I always go ask them, what's going on? And they'll usually tell me, oh, nothing's going on. I'm like, you're a little different. Like, what's going on? I just haven't felt very appreciated. I'm like, let's go talk. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, I've been here for a year, haven't got a raise. I've added this and this and this to my thing. And I said, whoa, keep going. Tell me everything you've added. And they'll tell me what they feel they've added. And I'll either say, well, yeah, but remember when you did this, 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 and this, I think they balance out, but how can I help you feel appreciated? And, sometimes it's just recognition, but sometimes it's money. And then, but you have the conversation. And then all of a sudden, a lot of times I'm like, you know what? You're right. I didn't notice you're doing all that. I'm going to give you a raise. And they're super happy and they do so much more work for you again because something fell off. It's weird how many people won't come tell you, they'll just quit, right? But if you can notice something's off and talk to them, then you can fix it before it goes bad. And then last thing, and I'll let you guys ask the questions, is don't be afraid to just ask. Like, so much success in the company is coming from just having the courage to ask. You never know. Like, I've been at networking events with people I'd never met before, and they're talking about how they're about to build a new facility to make, like, there's this soap facility here in Ephraim that we just built a big expansion on, right? And they were like talking about how they were going to expand their company and they're going to bring all this stuff in. I was like, well, who's going to build it? And they're like, oh, we haven't figured that out yet. And I'm like, can we do it? That's it. Didn't ask if I could bid. I didn't ask if we could look at it for them, talk to them about it. I said, can we do it? And they said, well, you guys do that stuff? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, you could do it. They gave us the job. All I did is asked, can I do it? You never know. All right, so don't be afraid to ask. Anyway, that's about what I had to talk to you guys about. But if you guys have any questions, like if you're planning on building business, I will bring up one thing and then I'll let you go to the questions. My wife and I, we have a company called Oracle and Hercules LLC. And we invest in like all these startup companies. And we've invested in a lot of young startup companies. And most of them don't work out, right? But the reason you invest in those is because when they do work out, if you make money on 1 out of 20, you still made a lot of money. So it's worth it. So we've done a lot of listening to different pitches and different companies. So if you guys have questions, we can help you with a lot of that stuff. And then she has a company, and it's called Taste Your Magic, and she does all these amazing things with it, including retreats and playing with the animals and animal healing and all this stuff. But in that, she did a reality show, and she won the reality show where they had to grow their business and the show and everything like that. And so she's got all these coaches and she's learned amazing things. So, but if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer them if you have something you've been thinking about. Anybody? If not, break. Just kidding. Go ahead.
What was the hardest thing for you to get your business started?
I think the hardest thing for me was money. Because when we first started, I didn't want to buy money. So he took all the money, right? And I didn't have enough money to like buy stuff. And so I'm about to do a project and I got to buy $500,000 worth of metal and I don't have any money to buy it. And so there's a lot of ways to get money. I've learned that, right? You can go get loans, but you're going to pay a pretty high interest rate. You can get investors, but you're going to have to give up either equity or a whole bunch of your profits for a while. But one of the easiest ways to do it is just play with your aging. So I would go get money from the bank and they would give me, 30 days to pay it back. But because I had just bought the company, I would negotiate with the customer to pay up front a certain amount or to pay me within 15 days, less days. And so I'd go get the money, buy the materials, bill the customer would pay me, I'd use their money to pay back the loan, right? And so you don't have to always, there's creative ways to get money that you don't have to always use investors, but a lot of times you might, right off the bat, need it. But now I always keep enough money to self-finance and I have revolving lines of credits with the bank and all that kind of stuff. So I don't need investors. But the easiest way off the bat is to just work with the aging, with how you're going to build.
There's a lot of grants too, options,
There's definitely a lot of grants.
businesses, and different types of people, what you're creating.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So as you've invested in startups, have you noticed a pattern that differentiates the ones that fail and the ones that succeed?
Yeah, I have. But usually that pattern is, well, there's two patterns I've noticed. Most of the ones that fail, it's a saturated market. They should have never got in it, right? And there's other reasons, but that most of them that fail, it's because they jumped into a market that was super saturated. Like, I'm going to embroid hats. Well, there's millions of people that embroid hats, you know what I mean? But the ones that succeed, it's usually the person, not the business. Like, we've invested in people that, because we liked the person, they were go-getters. They were constantly at everything we went to. Also, we'd go to networking events and they're there. We go to somebody's birthday and they're there. They were at everything, constantly pushing their agenda. I see them online. I see it, and I'm like, I'm gonna invest in that person. They're gonna go that hard. We're gonna see them everywhere. That's how they're gonna run their business. And we invest in the person, usually. Yeah. Not even the idea. Some of the ideas I don't even understand. I invested in this one that's like, they're taking like tokenizing assets. I work construction, right? But I invested in the person, and that thing's taken off, right? And I still don't understand what it is. So yeah. Anybody else? I'm gonna throw some of these out. What size are you? Medium. There you go. You. There you go. We got a bunch of these, you guys. Anybody else got a question? You can be dumb. I don't care. You could ask, when did I start going bald? What's up? How to meet my wife? Ooh, that's a good one. So I went through a pretty rough time in life. I wasn't going to talk about it in this, but so the reason I said the whole thing about being married, I was actually married before. It was a fight all the time with the company especially. So I got divorced. And in that divorce, I wanted to get back to riding horses. And I knew Ruth from high school. She was a horse girl, right? She'd always trained horses. She's been training horses, certified, and running a business training horses since she was 16. Anyway, so I asked her if she had any horses for sale. And we went on a horse ride. And I'll tell you when you're older. So yeah, it's been really good. It's been an amazing life with her. Thanks for that question.
What are some of the biggest challenges you had with having employees or hiring and firing them?
That's the hardest part about having a company, actually. The hardest part. So I've had a lot of challenges. The hardest thing has been hiring leaders. I've hired leaders and paid so much money to like headhunter firms to find them for me, for project management and stuff. And I haven't had a single one make it through a full project. It's been so hard. I end up having to go take over that project to finish it because it's not working out. All of my leaders I had to grow within and teach them our process, because the union kind of ruins them. The union teaches them to work at a certain level and they can't work harder than that. And so, like, for example, when we weld like 4-inch pipe, I want my guys to do 7 of those a day. The union only requires 2, right? And it's so hard to just keep people working at our level because I bid to do 7. I'm gonna lose money if I do 2. But then I pay them a premium for working that hard too. And so one of the hardest things is finding leaders and keeping leaders. You can find workers really easy. Like, as from a business point of view, now take out the love and people part of it. From the business point of view, you can hire laborers, you can hire office staff like secretaries, you can hire welders, fitters, skilled staff, easy. But leadership, so hard to hire. So hard to hire. And those, you want to hire somebody you trust and then teach them how to do their job. You don't want to hire somebody who does the job best. You want to hire somebody you can trust and then teach them how to do the job. And that took me a while to learn. I kept hiring people that had the best resume, and they would just steal money, they'd quit, they would never show up because their resume looked good, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I ran into the most. In the right.
What's your workflow when doing a new project?
A new project? So after I get awarded the project, the very first thing I do is I order materials. And I take that to my purchaser. I show them everything that I bid, and we order all the materials. So we can get them coming soon. As soon as I order materials, I bill them. Because a lot of times I'm ordering millions of dollars worth of material, and I do not want to finance that, right, for the customer for free. So as soon as I order the materials, I bill it. Then I start putting together a team. I bring in who I'm going to assign to be the project manager. I let them choose their foreman, and then we start putting together the team, what we need to do the project. And then we start putting everything on site that we need and mobilizing to the project. We go through the drawings and we find out what we can build in our fab shop, and we take it over to our fab shop and start moving it into the production line. And then we mobilize to the project and work on it. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a construction type thing, but the very first thing we do is we order materials and then go through everything I bid as a team to make sure there's nothing missing, and then move forward.
I was gonna ask, as a CFO, what's the hardest part about managing the finances of a big business like that?
I think the hardest part is you can't do all of that yourself, right? So actually, I don't have time to go through all of the finance. So I need reports. So I have to hire the right people for the right reports. So I hire a controller that puts together my Friday folly that tells me how I do every week. And then I have an accounting firm they have about 4 people that work on our stuff, but they only work on it, those 4 people work on it probably 5 hours a week. But they go through our books, because we moved our QuickBooks to online, and they send those numbers. But when you're smaller, you're going to want to check all that stuff yourself, and you're just going to track every number. Like, make sure everything is categorized to a job. If you just have your expenses, well, you don't know how you did, so you can use it for the next thing, right? So it doesn't have to be a job. Mine's a job, right? But it could be projects, or it could be, I'm not sure, if you're selling something, it could be merchandise, but you want all your costs associated there. And then you want to check your profit and loss statement minimum monthly. So if you can't figure out your P&L, a lot of people do quarterly P&Ls, and I don't know how they stay in business. You're gonna wanna check that. And then you wanna check your balance sheet and so that's how you help get because really your cash flow so you can get a lot of it off your balance sheet, and then you want your cash flow. So that'll tell you exactly how your company's doing. So those are the 3 main things you wanna check.
We probably need to stop taking questions now because that's all the time we have. But thanks so much, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.